Hello and welcome to the Famalam podcast. We are thinking today about church attendance. We had a conversation last week with the whole family who are either ill or very busy. So it's me flying solo with the wonderful Rachel Gardner. Rachel, it's so good to have you here with us. Thank you for making some time.
I only said yes to this because I was going to meet your Famalam. So,
I'm so sorry.
I mean, you're okay, but I know you. I wanted to meet the rest of the crew.
They're way nicer than I am. It's true. And so, yeah, you're missing out. I'm really sorry.
Everybody. Yeah.
And those of you who are watching, I've just got to say, Rachel, your setup looks proper legit.
Oh,
I am so impressed.
It's the top of the landing in the vicarage. So actually, if I was to pull back from here, it doesn't look legit at all. But I do a podcast. So the team sent me a microphone. And when I clicked on the platform you use, I was like, oh, I have like stuff we can use. So this makes me feel so happy because I'm in special measures all the time when it comes to tech, wherever I work. So this makes me look and sound like I know what I'm talking about. So I'm very happy.
Well, you definitely look the part. And if you're not watching, sorry. But you sound the part too, Rachel. Tell us.
Microphone, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I live in Blackburn in the north of England. I'm a mom. I'm married to lovely Jason. We have a little poodle dog called Leo. You might hear him barking in the background. I've been a youth worker for 25 years. I love engaging young people in every emerging generation, because there's been a few of them since I've been a youth worker, in just the beauty of the gospel, that Jesus is good news for the entirety of their life and their experience and what they're going through. I'm also part of the team at Youthscape, and I do a bit of stuff here with the diocese, helping churches get youth ministry going and growing. And I just think the older I get, Gareth, and the more the world around me changes, I'm convinced that Jesus is the rock on which I build my life, and everything coming out of his mouth is beautiful and true. But I also just feel increasingly that I've got learner plates on and just trying to work out all this stuff: parenting, youth work, Jason and I, church leaders, just all the rest of it, trying to work it out, really.
Yeah, very, very familiar feelings too, for all of that. I mean, doing a podcast on family life, we're like, well, golly, we haven't got it all right.
I mean, are you regretting it yet?
No, it's why we got the kids involved, because otherwise it looks like we know what we're talking about. And the kids, we're learning stuff about our kids that we never knew. So that's
amazing.
That's
you guys are brilliant. Such a gift.
Well, I love the heart that you and Jason have in terms of the church that you planted. And the reason we thought of you, Rachel, to have this conversation with about engaging kids, young people with church attendance as part of family life is because of everything you just said. You've got your own family, you're a church leader, but that history of youth work seems to be a really helpful thing, because one of the things that Daisy said was how important youth workers are to our young people engaging with youth. So maybe that's a good place to start. What do you think are the most effective ways of helping engage children, young people with that sense of belonging in a church community? How do we do it? From your experience as a church leader, experience as a youth leader?
I think the word belonging is a secret, isn't it? I think children and young people are such a gift to the body of Christ, particularly neurodiverse children and young people, particularly young people that struggle to get up in the morning and to get into services. I think, young people are often better than anybody else at letting us see what it looks like to belong to this little community. They show us our flaws and where it's maybe not working. So that is a real gift. I love the work of a guy called John Roberto, who's I think he's in his 80s now. I got to interview him last year. He's a Canadian Catholic philosopher who has spent a lifetime talking about faith formation through all the decades of life.
Oh, wow.
And he talks about each 10 years, there's something different that's happening in terms of faith formation. So the first 10 years of life, we're experiencing the Christian faith. So children experience belonging in church as they encounter other people who belong. So I guess if we as adults don't feel that we belong, then the chances are the kids won't either. So probably we need to start by asking ourselves, do we feel we belong in this church? What are the signs that, that we feel welcome and belong? Because they're going to pick up this from us. But also they get to experience faith through us, and they experience what it's like to be in a community that forgives and speaks well of each other. And then when they do gossip about people, say, oh, do you know, I shouldn't have said that. And so I think children are orbiting our lives all the time, aren't they? So
Yeah.
they're working out whether they belong just through the markers of, do we smile at them or tut at them? Do we make space for them? Is there only space in a separate space in the hall next door, because the proper church is where the adults are in the quieter space? So I think all those things that we wrestle with as parents and church leaders are just so crucial. We use the language of loop in. So
Okay.
you're looped in. So kids that just come to our midweek projects, you're looped into the belonging of the church, and kids that we do assemblies with, and my children who don't always want to be in church, you're looped into the family. You're in, and then the next 10 years, which are the teenage years, which is what your Daisy was talking about, is construction. John Roberto talks about that's the time of
Okay.
the faith formation is construction. You're slightly taking things apart, and like a Lego, you're working out what fits and how does that fit with that, but you still need that kind of that sense of I belong, that experience of belonging, because if you're going to take apart this stuff and work out, do you really believe that Jesus is who he says he is, you need to know that this community around you aren't going to let you go. So youth workers play a really essential role, youth volunteers, because they step in at that point and go, yeah, you belong. That's not up for grabs. You belong. You're in. You're looped in. You're part of this. Yeah, of course. And now let's help you work out, so what does it mean about healing and faith and questions around gender and all the rest of this stuff? Like, what does that really mean? How does Jesus make a difference in your life? So that's why I think, Gareth, children and young people are such a gift to the whole church, because if you've got people in your mix that are showing up going, do I belong? And you've got young people in your mix going, does this make sense? Then guess what? There are loads of adults in the community and in the church saying, do I belong? Does this make sense? And if they see that this is a church that makes space for that, then actually children and young people are the best kind of for everybody, aren't they? If we make church work for children and young people, it'll work for all ages. So
I love that. So how do you think parents can model church to their kids without it feeling forced, without it feeling coercive? We were talking as a family when they were younger, it's like, well, we just go to church, that's what we do.
yeah.
And then trying to navigate, particularly as they were getting more agency, becoming adolescents, sports clubs, all that. What's your experience in helping people engage with church as a priority without it being forced or
such big? I'm such an activist, Gareth, that these are such important questions. I do think about them, but I'm so conscious that we just tend to work it out on the fly, don't we? And I guess if in my head church is an event that I go to, then my message to the children and in my family is we're now going to church, and we're either going to church or you're going to sports groups, clubs or whatever. Whereas if it is we are church, this is our family, then it's less about what we're going to and not going to, but the fact this is our identity. So how do we connect with people from our church community at other times as well? So the tension of the sports thing is really real. At the moment for us, our kids don't do sports fixtures when our big family church stuff happens. It's like, this is our family gathering on a Sunday morning. Yeah. And at the moment, our kids, 14 and 8, they're really happy with that decision. And then we, as Jason and I, work very hard to say, so let's make sure we get you to the things at other times, because that's it's a priority. Your sports is a priority to us. So we really love it that you're coming with us, as the priority is our church family on a Sunday morning. So we're going to then, really demonstrate to you that also matters to Jesus and it matters to us. So at the moment for us, that's the way that we work in it, because we don't want our kids to think, there's like kind of a hierarchy of what God enjoys. He enjoys all of it, but that we as a family make that choice. The other thing is that, our kids are leaders, kids like yours. So there's no start or end to this. They rock up all the time. They're there making the coffees, helping us take out the bins. The most precious chats happen with people at those bits. So I would encourage, if you can, don't just think, oh, can I take my young person or my kid to this service that Gareth and Lizzy are running? Like, could we be there at the beginning so they get to see back? Can they help turn the urn on? Could we be part of setting up? Because I find, as a church leader, some of the really fun stuff, the really intergenerational stuff, is that bit of worship before we open the doors to welcome people in. That setting up stuff, picking up all the poo around the edge of the church. That's much more adventurous for kids and teenagers, because it's intergenerational. Somehow when we open the doors and it all gets a bit bit formal, we can get a little bit like kids over here, youth over here, adults over here. So I think if you can, as an adult, enjoy being around your brothers and sisters in Christ doing crazy stuff, take the kids along. They will get excited about what excites you, but also find spaces that they enjoy without you. Yeah, I mean, that's important too, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Phil and Danny Knox, we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and we're talking about how the first 7 years of a life, a child tends to relate more fully to the mum. The second 7 years tend to relate more fully to the dad. And the third 7 years tend to relate more closely to their friends. And I think what you're describing is a place where young people, our children, can connect with all sorts of different people. And we certainly talked in the last episode about how serving helps to make you feel like you belong.
Yeah,
It's really
absolutely.
interesting that you noted that yourself.
Yeah.
But how about the role of an older leader? You've got experience as youth worker, older leaders as a mentor, as sort of cheering. We led a church plant on a challenging estate. Lizzy was reminding us last week of how some of the young adults took our kids out for coffee and just hung out with them. And our kids were saying how important it was for them that they had people who were a couple of stages ahead of them. So talk a little bit more about that, the role of the youth leader, the role of mentors that aren't just peers, but a couple of stages ahead as well. Is that your experience too?
Oh, absolutely. And I think where we are at St. Luke's, it feels like we've got that on speed, if you don't mind me naming a street drug that no one should be taking. Please don't take speed, anybody. But it feels like it's that accelerated, because one of the beauties of sometimes being in communities of so-called deprivation is that people don't expect to be siloed. They want to be together with a big old family. Right. And I know for my teenager, they really love connecting with someone in their 80s. And I don't know that they have particularly deep and meaningful conversations, but my 14-year-old will make a beeline for this particular person on a Sunday morning and just get a lot of love. And I'd watch my 14-year-old's love tanks fill up. You know, that sense of, I feel loved, I feel known, I feel seen by someone who isn't a qualified youth leader. They're just an older person that cares and is able to be really present and calm and kind. And I think as parents or as carers, or as those that care about the faith formation of younger people and children, I think it's good to have strategic ideas in our head and models in our head, like actually intergenerational stuff works. Faith of someone a bit older than you is really contagious for you when you're younger. Yeah. But also then it might be that my young person or kid makes a beeline to someone I hadn't even thought about. Now, we as parents, we want that to be safe. We want them to be safe adults. We want them to be people who are loving Jesus, who are modeling something our kids can catch that will be good for them. We don't want to be too prescriptive. I think we want to see who's on fire in this community and where do our kids gravitate towards. One thing that's quite interesting, someone asked me a question today, Gareth, that I was like, oh my goodness, I'd not even considered that. So we've got a baptism coming up in a few weeks' time. We baptise people twice a year, Easter Sunday and the first Sunday of Advent. And we baptise people often brand new to Jesus, got a background of crime, prison, drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, that kind of stuff. And so their testimonies are, Jesus rescued me out of hell and put me in his kingdom of light. And this lovely person is our new families worker. And she said, are all the families happy that their kids are going to, because I was like, all the kids are in, all the youth are in, we're not going anywhere. Everyone's in, we're not doing activities on the fringe. This is what we do. And she said, are all the families okay about that, about their kids hearing these stories? And I said, do you know what? In the 5 years that we've been here, I've not had a single parent say to me, actually, I don't want my kid hearing this. Wow. And I think it's partly because the adults that share their stories are very mindful of the fact there are little ones present. Yeah. But B, because actually in this community, what it looks like to follow Jesus is your life is radically changed. And we want our children and young people to hear that. And they'll hear it at the level they can understand it. That's a beautiful thing about kids. Sometimes it goes over their head. But I just thought I love being part of a church where parents are not protecting their kids from hearing Jesus really changes lives. Yeah. Like there's lots of stuff we want to protect our kids from. Of course there is. Yeah. But I love it that we can be part of a church where we want our children and young people to hear the adult in inverted commas stories, because we want them to see the gospel is serious. It's good news. It's real.
Right.
It's not a colouring in sheet. It's like life and death. And I think as the world around us gets more difficult and more unkind online, and our young people have to deal with harsher and harsher things, I want them to know there's a bunch of adults and all ages in their church community that are able to hold space for the big conversations if ever they need to have that. I realize I'm not presenting you a nice, neat formula, but I think we can
That's not what
trust the
podcasts are
body of
for,
Christ.
right? This is because we're trying to tease out what's going on. How do we make sense of this?
Yeah.
How do we do the best that we can in the
Yeah.
situations in which we find ourselves? And
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a really beautiful reflection for us all. Like you say, you want to be safe. You want your kids to be safe, but we have been saved by. I've reflected on how the word salvation means. We're made safe. The Father's made us safe.
Right, Gareth.
Like that's what we're all looking for. We're looking to be safe, and that's what Jesus has done for us. And so, we need to do safeguarding well. Of course we do. But that's been our experience too of living the rawness of life with our kids and trying not to hide it from them, because it's easy, you feel that compulsion to, but at the same time, when we're not always very good at hiding it, are we? It comes out. And so better be honest about what's going on. So let's talk about, Rachel, about what are some of the strategies that you've seen work in your experience as a youth worker, perhaps as a parent too. How do parents deal with that difficult time of kids going, I don't want to go?
I don't want to go. So our kids are adopted. And when we did the training years ago to approve us to be adoptive parents, one of the social workers sort of said, I've got a really important question for you. We're like, what? She said, it's a bit make or break. I was like, what? And she said, right, I want you to imagine that you've adopted your child and they get to 17 and then one Sunday morning they decide they don't want to come to church with you.
Yeah.
And me and Jace are like, what? We get to 17? We're expecting it at like 7. So she laughed and we laughed and it was all like theoretical and we moved on. Whereas reality, isn't it, that actually each child is very, very different and you can't parent hypothetically. You've got to parent the child in front of you.
Great.
And so we've never had a situation where one of our two have said, I am not going to church. We've had situations where they're just like, oh, we're just so many people in the house. Can you just can we do? So we've had stuff where we've kind of clocked, actually, we just need to readdress the balance a bit. And our youngest, because church on a Sunday morning is a really long stint from like 8:30 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. So what we do, our strategy with both of them is, because they're different ages. With our eldest, she can stay at home now and get herself all ready. And then one of us comes back and gets her and she has sleepover. Her friends come for sleepovers. That's part of the deal. They can come to us and come on a Sunday. So we make a bit more of a celebration of it. And we've kind of made the decision. We really want to get to know our kids' friends. We know they'll want to do sleepovers at weekends. We'd love her to still be part of Sunday morning church. So we prioritise being the house that hosts the sleepovers. So it means Sunday morning for us, we're even more exhausted than normal. Lord, we need your Holy Spirit. But actually, this really matters. Like we really want to do that. So it's that kind of thing. How much cost are you willing to pay for your kids to know that their family and their life is welcome at church? Our youngest, as long as we feed him lots at church, he's fine at the moment. But I think I remember Danielle Strickland once saying, because I asked her, like, how do you get like the balance right between having kids and being church leaders and she said something like, oh, don't worry about balance, go for rhythm. And what she meant was, if you're looking for balance, her view, and I quite like this actually, her view is you'll never strike that balance. You'll never be like, oh, we've got it, Pat, we've got it nailed. Like we've got it. Whereas if you go for rhythm, like, are you guys, it's a fast rhythm at the moment, but are you guys all dancing to the same rhythm? Are your children, is their life, are they feeling invigorated? Are they feeling alive? And if not, then you've got to readdress the rhythm. So actually chatting with your kids, how is it going? What are you enjoying? What are the things that you do that you really love? How can we help you? Don't be afraid to say to your teenage kids, like, what is it you love? How could we help you with church? What would you love to see differently? That's not a consumer thing. That's not saying, oh, our kids are consumerist. And that's just recognizing that your children have preferences. There are things they like and don't like. And that's okay for them to have that. They can enjoy things and not enjoy things. That doesn't mean they're about to give up on Jesus. And I think As a Christian parent, I long more than anything for my children to love Jesus till the day they die. I want them to reach
Yeah.
beyond me and do greater things and know his grace always. And sometimes I can get a little bit kind of stuck in, oh no, they don't want to go to youth club. Oh no, this is the unraveling begins here. And I think just when you feel those moments, just pause and say, no, no, actually, okay. This is okay. What are they not liking? What are they enjoying? How are they connecting with Jesus in different ways? How can I support them in that? So I think sometimes it's being prepared as parents to ask our kids the questions that maybe we think they'll say, oh, great. I haven't
Hmm.
got to go to church now. But being bold enough to ask that, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk it through. And what about, you talked about rhythms. That's really interesting. What are some of the rhythms that you have seen that have been helpful to children and young people
Mm,
throughout your ministry that they've perhaps taken on during the week that's meant that church
yeah.
isn't like the be all and end all of their Christian faith, but it's is part of it.
Yeah.
But like you say, the goal is growing in their relationship with Jesus, and church is
Yeah.
part of that, but it's not
Yeah.
all of it. So what are some of the good practices that you've seen parents, you
Yeah.
might have seen parents like, I want to do that when my kids get to that age, or whatever, or it might be something you're doing already with your kids. But
Yeah.
what are some of the things that we can do as parents to help our kids develop that relationship with Jesus so that church is an expression of that rather than just something that we do?
Yeah. And each family will do it very, very differently. And
Mm,
I, I'm going to answer that, but I'm also just going to push back a little bit gently on church is not everything. You're absolutely right. We
mm,
don't want children and young people to just think, well, as long as I come to an event, that is me growing in my walk with Jesus. That
right.
can be part of it, but that's not the sole. But I do think that for so many young people, there is so much pressure on them from school to do well. Maybe they're living in home environments where there's pressure. Maybe there's other things going on.
Mm,
There's a lot of online pressure. And I think that actually, if churches can create spaces with young people that are just places where they can lay down the weapons of attack and defense
mm,
and be loved and just be present, I think that is an extraordinary gift to young people. I think as an
yeah.
adult, I've got the deep resources, resilient resources. I've got like personal confidence. I've got some educational confidence. I've got some experience. I've tried things, it failed. I can pick myself up. I think when you're a young person and you're just working out who you are, and you haven't yet really got enough life experience to say, I can mess up and Jesus still forgives me, and I can read the Bible, and sometimes it's exciting and sometimes it's just so boring, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I'll just keep going. Like when you don't have those habits in your life, you really do need a Christian community around you that are
Mm,
kind of doing that alongside you so that you are picking up by osmosis a little bit.
mm,
Oh, okay. All right. This is okay. I can do this. And I think then that does help young people then develop practices for themselves. And I think in this day and age, it's practices like putting your phone on silent and sitting quietly with Jesus. And
huh,
ways that we can do that in our family life is if actually our kids see that we don't have our phones at the table, we put our
yeah,
phones away, we switch our phones off, and that our kids listen to us pray, see that we pray. In the morning, Jason and I get up on a Tuesday morning and we get up and we read the Bible together and we pray together for half an hour.
yeah,
And we only do that once a week. The rest of the time we do it on our own. But the kids know we're doing that. We're not, there's
yeah,
no one else around. We're just doing that because
yeah,
that is so important. So I think it's both what our children see us doing, what we're also creating space for them to do, praying with them, having stuff for them to do. It could be them doing Lecto 365. It could be
mhm,
reading notes. It could be giving a bit of their pocket money that they get. And I would not worry too much if you don't see your kids jumping at stuff and doing it regularly. If they're taking little bite sizes of things,
mhm,
that's okay. They can try different things out because actually each of these is helping them build some sense of, oh, actually, I quite like doing that. I quite like
mhm,
listening to Spotify worship at night. And that's the last thing I listen to before I go to bed at night. It just gives them a language and a way to engage with stuff. But don't underestimate the value of young people being with us in worship,
yeah,
catching hold of our hunger and seeing that too, which is why, Gareth, I know you guys, this is your heart where you are as well. We love creating spaces where young people with other young people can worship, but we also always want young people to be invited in to
yeah,
what we're getting up to.
yeah,
We haven't got to translate that for them. We haven't got to make it relevant for them. We could just invite them in and
Yeah.
say, you're welcome here. We're just going to love Jesus now and worship him. There's a story I heard at the weekend. So I got to interview the lovely Sasha Jones, who was on Married at First Sight. And she became a Christian from she was into crystals and angel
Uh-huh.
numbers and just crazy stuff like that. And she met Jesus really powerfully and then decided that she wanted to go and find Jesus in church because she kind of grew up knowing that Christians go to church.
Yeah.
So the first church she walked to in her town, she was like, I go to church, plays with like pointy spires. So the first church she went to in her town, the doors were shut, the service wasn't on. The next one, someone met her on the door and was like, oh, my dear, are you lost? And
Oh
she
my
said to
word.
me, but I just wanted to find God and be with people. And I'm hearing more and more stories of young people who are walking into churches, not looking for a youth club or a table tennis bat or a Nintendo Switch. They're looking for profound encounter. Sometimes those of us that have grown up in church and our kids have grown up in church, I think maybe we've forgotten just how powerful it is to be in those places of worship and wonder together and what that will be doing in our children. Even on those days that we're like, I don't even know if they're growing or reading their Bible or even care.
Yeah.
That is a real fear that we have. But keep showing up in their lives with Jesus. Yeah.
But I love that idea that, I feel really challenged thinking about it, that because what you're arguing is, I said, how do they develop practices so that church feels meaningful? You're saying by being around the community of faith, by going to church, actually is the thing that helps them develop those practices. And that's a really fascinating way of seeing how it works. Because we have both a community faith, a faith that joins us to one another, but we also have our own personal faith.
Yeah.
And there's the assumption that I'm making that happens by us starting personally, privately, but that's not true for everybody. For some people, it's going to be much more important that community aspect and seeing it modeled, like you say. Super helpful, Rachel. What would you say then would be some of your top actions that parents might be able to take to help young people develop a lasting and personal faith? I think we've talked about some of them, but top tips from Rachel Gardner.
Yeah,
What
wow.
do you think?
I think it's a practice of saying sorry.
Huh.
Yeah, I think our kids see the impact. So young people are asking key questions about faith, like about use, choice, and sense. So they're asking, what is the use? Young people are pragmatists. What difference can I use this? Like, can I use my faith? Can I pray for somebody and make a difference? What about when I'm at school and everything's going on? Can I use it? Sense. Does my faith, does knowing Jesus help me make sense of the world? And can I make sense of the world through knowing Jesus? And then choice, like, can I choose to follow Jesus? And I think those things are so subtle. They don't even know they're asking that, but these are key things. And the way they answer those is often by looking at the role models around them. Like, do they see in us that Jesus is living in our lives when we're in the car driving them somewhere and we're just saying, oh, I'm just going to pray a blessing. God, as Tom goes and plays rugby, God, you've given him the strength of his legs, let him kick it. Stuff that just make it a natural part of your life, that Jesus is talked about and that your faith makes sense in your family. And say sorry. So say, do you know what? I was just bad chatting somebody at church and you guys overheard me and I was talking about somebody. I just want to say sorry to you. And they're like, oh, Mum, I don't know. No, but I want you to know that I've spotted that in me and I'm sorry. Yeah. Now, don't make a massive sermon of it. Move on. But your kids are orbiting your life. So if you're moaning about somebody at church and then you're really nice to them in their face next week, your kids are like, hypocrite. Yeah. So I think and that's not to make us hyper vigilant, but just be aware that your life is a witness in the most beautiful way. Just do it. Own your stuff. And then I think I would say pick a practice. Like, what is Jesus asking you to do? Is he asking you to be generous? Pick a parable. What parable is Jesus saying? I want you to be the servant going out in the banquet and inviting everybody in. I want you to go. Just think, how could we as a family, what is a parable that we want to live out? What is one of those disruptive stories that Jesus tells? And then I would say as a family, be a family on a mission. Like, be a team. So what do you want to go and do? Do you want to go and do something just as a random, like litter picking somewhere, and then give a massive bit of food, and then take loads of food to someone who hasn't got enough food?
Yeah.
You know, your children will want to be part of your adventure with you. So what could you do? And it could be that as a family, you sign up on the welcome team, or as a family, you sign up to help out with the little minis. I mean, gosh, Gareth, could you imagine if a family came into your church and said, we as a family would like to serve on the kids team? You'd be like, what?
Hello.
Amazing. But yeah. So I think have fun, have a bit of fun with this stuff. Because I think I grew up in a lovely family that had a certain voice to pray. So we all knew, oh no, mum's got her prayer voice on. And it didn't feel like real life. So I think the more that like knowing Jesus is part of your life, your real life, bring that to your kids and let them see how Jesus was your life and have fun together. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Just remind us what the name of your podcast is.
That's very kind of you. It's called Talking Youth Ministry. So it's with myself, Lucy Ray, and Martin Saunders. We have a lot of fun chatting about youth ministry. Yeah.
Amazing. And I was telling Rachel just before we start recording how significant her book has been, and us as church leaders trying to help some of our young people, young adults process stuff about sex and all of that. The Sex Thing by Rachel Gardner. It's fantastic, Rachel. And it was such a gift to me as we were trying to walk our church through that and have conversations with young people, young adults. And so thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant talking with you and sharing your wisdom. As ever, if you would like to share your thoughts or get in touch, then please email us hello@famalampod.com or follow us on Instagram @famalampod. Follow us, like us, share us, do all the things you do with podcasts. And thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks so much for listening, for watching, and God bless you. Bye.
Bye.